very often elsewhere, but definitely not in church. And then definitely not after the senior pastor. So I ask for your patience and indulgence. It is indeed both an immense privilege and a joy for me to stand with you here today to mark the opening of this beautiful new church building here at Bukit Batok West Extension, just across from Teng Ang, the first new HDB town in over 20 years since Punggol. Teng Ang is roughly the size of Bishan and will eventually house some 42,000 flats with a mix of flat types. Coincidentally, Bishan is where ARPC runs a second center at Khor Secondary School. I note that ARPC has started to work with our grassroots organizations, so some of my grassroots leaders are here, in Bukit Batok West Extension to reach out to the residents, particularly also the seniors, and some volunteer groups in the immediate neighborhood. Let me urge you to continue your great work, to do more, and even consider extending your ministry to Teng Ang, which I know you are eager to do, as Senior Pastor Chris Chia has said. In fact, when I was preparing for this speech, I realized that you have quite deliberately, it seems, named your church ARPC at Teng Ang. So, you are claiming this territory. And I'll gladly cede the territory to you. This new center is evidence that ARPC is casting its vision upwards, beyond your historical roots, which some of us view as very atas, upper middle class, very Bukit Timah, with its premium schools and high-end housing. I commend you for embracing a broader swath of people, and especially HDB heartlanders, in your continued outreach. And I think that's what Pastor Chia was also talking about earlier. The ARPC website categorically states the 7 types of ministries you plan to undertake here at Bukit Batok West Extension and at Teng Ang. So I'll list the 7, so I'll hold you to it. Well, so here goes the 7 ministries, right? Community care to rental flat residents. And indeed, you are blessed because the rental flat is just behind you, just behind the church, immediately, just a walk away. Adoption of dormitory to reach foreign guest workers. Again, very blessed that thousands of foreign workers at Teng Ang. The dormitory is there because they still, are developing Teng Ang. Family center with programs for marriage counseling, enrichment, and parenting. Indeed, very welcome. There are many, many young families in Bukit Batok West Extension as well as Teng Ang. Children's work, from preschool childcare to after-school care and tuition. The part that I didn't have, which is not here, is reversal of TFR. We need to learn how to do that. Well, the next one is mental wellness and special needs, urban farming and creation care. And actually, Teng Ang is going to have a lot of community garden lots. Many we are building. And actually, our grassroots are very worried as to how they can help to organize these community gardeners, so we won't mind having some helping hand, HH. Yeah? And lastly, of course, marketplace ministries. So you will definitely have much on your plate. This is an ambitious and well-rounded agenda, but one for which ARPC, I'm sure, is well equipped to carry out, given your church accomplishments with your existing centers. It recognizes the holistic nature of the gospel, addressing the whole man, physically, socially, and spiritually, and the leavening influence it can have on the community around us. So I want to take this opportunity to reflect on the vision that this church has for its role in this community. This church is not just here to exist for the sake of its members, but to make an impact on the lives of the people who live here. The people in Bukit Batok West Extension and Tengah are not here by accident. As Christians, one would say that God has placed them here, and He has now placed your church here in this very community to do good and be a witness of His love, grace, and hope to them. We gather here today, therefore, not simply to celebrate the completion of a building, but to celebrate the beginning of a new chapter in the story of your church here in this community. But more than a new beginning, the opening of ARPC at Tengah is also a call to action. According to the Bible, since the days of the early church in Acts, the gospel has always been about reaching new areas, expanding the influence of God's kingdom. Jesus' own ministry was one of seeking out those on the margins, going into new areas and even difficult places to do good and to bring His message of hope and salvation. While the initial work of planting this church is significant and exciting, there are other aspects to this ministry. The church is also called to be a lasting presence in the community, a source of spiritual nourishment, a beacon of hope, and equally important, a catalyst for transformation. Furthermore, the land that your church now stands on has a lease term of 30 years. You are therefore not here simply for a moment or a season. You are here for the long haul, committed to seeing lives transformed, families restored, and communities renewed. This involves not only preaching the good news, but also coming alongside people here in their daily lives, walking with them through their struggles. This is a ministry of presence, being with the people, sharing life with them, and demonstrating the love of Christ in tangible ways. From the Old Testament through to the New Testament, we see God's heart for the vulnerable and the marginalized. In Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 18 to 19, we read, He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and loves the foreigner residing among you, giving them food and clothing. And you are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. He is a God who defends the vulnerable, who provides for the marginalized, and who calls His people to do the same. In the New Testament, Jesus embodies this compassion in His ministry. He healed the sick, welcomed the outcast, and offered forgiveness to those whom society had rejected, the tax collectors, publicans, and prostitutes. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 35 to 40, Jesus tells His followers that when they care for the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the sick, and the prisoner, they are serving Him. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. At the start of His ministry, right after He was tempted by Satan in the wilderness, He returned to His hometown Nazareth. He entered the synagogue one Sabbath and read to His audience from Isaiah 61, verse 1 and 2, these memorable verses. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. This was Jesus' first recorded sermon and sets the context for His ministry. And the ministry is to the poor, the brokenhearted, the blind, and the captives. Throughout the Christian history, the church has been a beacon of light to care for the sick, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, educate the children, visit those in prison. As we said by a pastor, right? Goes in and out of prison every week. Yeah, and he's only there for a very short stint, 2 hours. They set up hospitals, schools, homes, and all types of social services to help the needy. It is the sacrificial manner of these noble efforts that drew many men and women to Christ. As American sociologist Rodney Stark has shown, the rapid growth of the early church can be traced back to the care and compassion by Christians for the sick, especially during the plague-ridden years of the 2nd, 3rd, and 6th centuries. To use the late Reverend Tim Keller's phrase, the ministry of mercy to the poor is a grand apologetic. In the Middle Ages, the church likewise played a central role in founding hospitals, orphanages, and schools, meeting the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of the community. In the modern era, figures like William Wilberforce in Britain and Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States led movements of social justice grounded in their Christian faith. Wilberforce fought for the abolition of the slave trade, while King led the civil rights movement, both drawing deeply from their understanding of Scripture's love, call to love and justice. Here in Singapore, the Catholics, the Anglicans, and the Methodists, and your parent Presbyterian denomination all have extensive networks of care extending to different demographics, seniors, youths, and special needs. And I think Pastor Chris Chia also listed the networks you have, your extensive networks that you have built over the years in the various ministries. Mission schools like ACS, which incidentally, and I suppose very blessed, will have a presence here in Tengah very soon. Hospitals like St. Andrews, charities like Salvation Army are well-known examples of the excellent work that Christian organizations have done throughout the history of Singapore. So let us remember that you are called to live out this same radical and sacrificial care for those in need right here in this community. And as we stand at the threshold of this new ministry, we are reminded that this church is not just a building, but a living, breathing body of Christians called to make an eternal difference in the lives of those around us. ARPC's vision is clear: to reach this community with the love of Christ, to build a sustainable, long-term ministry, and to care for the vulnerable, just as God has always cared for his people. Jesus used two well-known metaphors to describe how the church is to impact those around us. I think many of you will know this. Salt of the earth and light of the world. Salt preserves food against decay, and light dispels darkness. At a time when the foundations of our society seem to be crumbling all around us, with widespread skepticism of authority, breakdown of families and relationships, and even loss of moral absolutes, the Christian witness points us back to the one true source of our being. I sincerely believe that ARPC at Tengah can be the salt of the earth and the light on a hill to illuminate the community around you. This also goes hand in hand with our nation's Forward Singapore Conversations efforts to refresh our social compact centered on fostering a more inclusive, equitable, and resilient society. It focuses on stronger collective responsibility, where besides the government, community and individuals are encouraged to contribute more actively to societal well-being through volunteerism, philanthropy, and sustainable practices. So, in conclusion, may you go forward with boldness and humility, trusting that the same God who called you to this work will equip you to carry it out. May you be a community that reflects God's love in both word and deed, reaching out to those who are lost, marginalized, and in need. And may God bless this church, its leaders, and every member as you embark on this exciting journey together. Amen.
Amen.